everybody. I see the ministry is here. Everybody is here. We will then now hand over to Mr. Sakaza to take us through the roll call, and so that we are then able to start with our meeting. Over to you, Mr. Sakaza.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to honorable members. Chair, we have today the following members. We've got the chairperson, Honorable Dungwa. We've got Honorable Nonsele, Honorable Mdabe, Honorable Zuma, Honorable Hinana, Honorable Begram, Honorable Kado, Honorable Ngobo, Honorable Mkondo. We also received an apology from Honorable Dena, Chair. From the support staff, Chair, I've got myself, Mr. Ngobo, the content advisor, Mr. Mupena, the researcher, Mr. Maputi, the communications officer. We have an apology from Poshia, the committee assistant. Thank you, Chair, from my side.
Thank you. I would have thought that you would. I've spoken to Ms. Ndabeni. Her child was admitted yesterday. The child is still in hospital, but much better than yesterday. But she is then awaiting doctor's rounds to check if the child can be admitted today. Thank you very much. From the ministry and the department, who is going to take us through?
Good morning, Chairperson and the honorable members. Chair, we have the Deputy Minister, who's part of the team. We also have the Commissioner of the Unemployment Insurance Fund, Mr. Tebogo Maruping. We have the CEO of Productivity South Africa, Mr. Motiba. We have the Executive Director of Nedlac, Ms. Lisa Seftel, and they are accompanied by Ms. Fezeka Puzi, who's the CFO of the fund, and Dr. Ludla, who's the CFO of Productivity South Africa. We have also Mr. Justice Chifularo from Productivity South Africa. We have the Chief of Staff in the Ministry, Mr. Kangala Mutumela. And we have Karabo Mahachane, the Office of the Deputy Minister. And we have, of course, Matapelo Matabache, who's in the DG's office. I'm struggling to identify others because they either joined using their cell phones, Chair. We have Sibusi Sopakati, who's the CEO of SCE. We have, of course, Tando Wababa, who is the PLO. We also have Mr. Temgosim Kalipi, who's the acting DDG responsible for labor policy and industrial relations. We have Zandi Mueli in the office of the Deputy Minister. Those are the people that I can identify, Chair. Like I said, I think others have joined using different gadgets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. Can those that have got different gadgets, I'm sorry, those that have joined in using gadgets, can they please identify themselves? I don't know, Mr. Sakaza, do we have guests? And if we do have guests, can guests please identify themselves?
My name is Tulas Nesi.
Oh.
My name is Tulas Nesi as a guest. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DG. I know you were not expecting me here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Any other guests? I think that was on a lighter note. Any other guests? I don't know why people don't want to identify themselves. We have got somebody from UCT, and I don't know why she is not. I don't know whether she has written in the chat, Mr. Sakaza.
Let me check, Chair. I've got what's this? Shamsuddin is CEO from Nedlac.
Nedlac, Chair.
Yes.
And also Mr. Sabelo Mali, who's the spokesperson of the ministry.
No, that's fine. It's only this lady from UCT who is just not prepared to tell her for us for her to identify herself. Because if we were physical, that's what she would then have been expected to do that, to tell us who she is. It is just one of those unfortunate things. But yeah, we will, Mr. Sakaza, you'll have to keep on checking. Otherwise, Minister, any overview before we start?
Thank you, Chairperson. I must also put an apology that I have an item in the cabinet. That's why the DG was not expecting me here. And but the cabinet has been rescheduled to 9:30 because of a number of meetings which had to take place. But in short, Chairperson and the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, of course, the DG and the officials of the department, the parliamentary support staff, and all those who are here, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the opportunity. We welcome, of course, your oversight and scrutiny of the department and the entities. The officials will provide a detailed presentation. Let me just flag the following points. In relation to the UIF, the low performance rate of 44% against set targets, we will see that on slide 5, should perhaps be mitigated by the fact that this represents a bounce back from the constant quarter-on-quarter decline during the 2021, the period of, we all know, of the worst of the pandemic and lockdowns. You will see that on slide 13. But on a positive note, slide 6 to 9 indicate that the UIF is at least collecting sufficient evidence to measure performance. Also, important point, or important to point out, is the role of the internal audit and monitoring and evaluation in providing necessary assurances to the performance reporting. You will see that on slide 10 and 11. And I believe that this is an indication of intent to tackle the many problems the UIF has faced. The honorable members will certainly want to interrogate the fund on the targets which were not received. These are listed in slides 16 to 21 and seek assurances that these matters are being addressed. The same goes for the budget variances, which are listed in slides 23 to 26. In relation to Nedlac, I want to commend Nedlac for the critical role it continues to play in promoting social cohesion and specifically in facilitating an all-society response both to the pandemic and subsequently to the economic challenges, which we know the pandemic brought in its wake. The average performance rate of 38%, slide 5, is somewhat misleading, as you will see that the core business functions performed are at 100%. In relation to the productivity South Africa, the entity regularly reminds us that South Africa faces, amongst others, a crisis of falling or stagnant productivity. That's on slide 9. This has a very negative long-term consequences for the economic growth and competitiveness. With limited budget, productivity contribute to productivity and business by business, particularly the SME sector, which was especially hit hard by the pandemics and the lockdowns. So the entity is also well managed with 100% performance against targets. That's on slide 12 to 16 in their presentation. Indeed, in most cases, targets were overachieved. Slide 20 tells the story of a well-managed entity which achieves an unqualified report. Chairperson, I think the DG maybe when he makes his presentation or introducing the commissioner, he has been absent for some time. You know, he had been suspended. The DC processes have taken place, and we had to respect those DC processes, and he has been brought back. But the DG will be able to give more details because we still have more staff who are undergoing the DC processes at the level of the UIF. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for that brief, important overview. We will then hand over to DG for the introduction of the first presentation, which is UIF. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to start where the Minister left off, you'll remember that I have written to the committee to indicate that after we have concluded the disciplinary processes involving the Commissioner of Unemployment Insurance Fund, Mr. Tebogo Maruping, we decided that we will bring him back in line with the sanctions that that has been meted out based on the allegations and allegations that were put to him. In the letter that I sent to the committee, I indicated that the sanction that Commissioner Maruping received was the final written warning and a 1-month suspension without pay. So on the 1st of February, Mr. Maruping came back and resumed his duties as the Commissioner of the Unemployment Insurance Fund. And as Minister indicated, we still have to finalize 2 more that involve the colleagues that were suspended. The DC process is still continuing. Once that is finalized, we will then inform the committee as to what is the outcome of those. So for now, I'll hand over, Chairperson, to the Commissioner, Commissioner Maruping, to take us through the UIF presentation. Thank you, Chair, and the honorable members.
Thank you very much, DG. Over to you, Mr. Maruping. And And you know, the house rules is that you'll show us your face, and you'll also display your report on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I believe my face is visible. Yes, Chair, I'll start with the presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Your face will have to be visible throughout the presentation. You seem to be having a problem.
No, I'm here, Chair. It's just that
Okay.
I was not prepared to share the document.
You were not?
I thought I was not ready to share the document. I thought the Secretariat was going to share the document.
So you are not a co-host? Oh, there it is.
There it's coming. Thank you. Thank you, Matapelo. What a relief. All right, thank you, Chair. I can start. I'm going to skip page 1 and go to page 2, Matapelo. On page 2, Chair, this just a breakdown of the agenda items that I'll be covering during the presentation, Chair. Matapelo, page 3. Page 3, Chair, just shows the UIF vision, the values, the mission, and also the statutes that informs the work of the UIF and what drives our targets, but I will not spend time on this slide, Chair. We can go to slide 5, Chair. I think on slide 5, members, what we are reflecting on this slide, we just confirm to the members that our quarter one performance information has been audited by internal audit, and they have confirmed that what we as management say is 44%, internal audit has confirmed that it is indeed 44%, and the evidence that has been provided meets the requirements, and therefore the performance I'm presenting has been audited and proven to be correct. Chair, slide 6, slide 7, slide 8, and slide 9, Chair. What I'm showing in these 4 slides, Chair, is just a confirmation per target. Matapel, if you can just go back to slide 6, then we'll skip the others. What we are reflecting, Chair, on this slide, I'm just going to talk through to slide 6 only. What we are reflecting here, Chair, is what management presented to internal audit as our own performance and supplied the relevant evidence. And what we're also showing is the confirmation from internal audit that indeed the evidence provided meets the requirements and is in line with the technical indicator descriptor. And therefore, internal audit was satisfied with the evidence. And they've expressed satisfaction with the evidence provided and also with the performance. That what we are presenting is a true reflection of our performance on the ground. And therefore, Chair and Chairperson and members, slide 6, slide 7, and slide 8, and slide 9, Chairperson, it's a reflection, is a replica of slide 6, but with different targets, just a confirmation that each target has been audited. No, each indicator has been audited and evidence provided, and internal audit is satisfied with the evidence provided. I'll move on, Chair, to slide 11. On slide 11, Chair, this is just a summary confirmation that the targets were audited by management, confirmed by monitoring and evaluation, and we are just confirming that evidence was adequately validated, and we're quite comfortable with our performance as it is reflected, Chair. If you can go to slide 12, the next one. Thank you. What we are reflecting in slide 12, Chair, is our performance over the quarters. Starting from quarter 1 in 2020-2021, I think as the Minister indicated, from quarter 1 in the year 2020-2021, our performance dropped up to a point where in the final quarter, we're sitting at 36%. And we just want to show members that our performance has improved in quarter 1 already by 8%, as the intention is to make sure that the trajectory continues. in an upward in an upward direction. Thank you, Chair. Even if you go to the slide 14. On slide 14, Chair, this is just a breakdown of each area. We have administration, business operations, and labor activation. Just to show that in administration, we had 12 indicators, achieved 5, and missed 7, and we're sitting at 42%. Business operations, we had 8, achieved 6, and we're sitting at 75%. The difficult area is the labor activation program, where we had 5 targets, and we have not achieved any of the targets in that space. What I'm going to do, Chair, now is walk the members through detailed indicator by indicator and just provide clarity on where we're sitting per target. Chair, if we can go to slide 16. Slide 16. The next slide. On this slide, Chair, I'm going to touch 2 areas, which is percentage of wasteful and fruitless expenditure and percentage of irregular expenditure. What drives a drop in these 2 targets, Chair, is how quickly the investigation is done and how quickly the necessary corrective steps are taken to close the gaps. And the case in point, I think the Minister did indicate. Matapole, you moved too quickly. Can you please go back to slide? Yes, thank you. When you go to Treasury to request condonations, there's key requirements that Treasury would require. First is that you have reported the wasteful and fruitless expenditure or irregular expenditure. Secondly, that you've done the necessary investigation. And then thirdly, that you've taken the necessary corrective steps where members of management or is it staff members may have been found to have done wrong. And it's only then that a particular wasteful and fruitless expenditure or an irregular expenditure can be condoned, and therefore you would see a drop in these 2 targets. And I think that the report in the next quarter, you'll start to see a drop because we are going to request then condonation on some of these items that are listed here. And I think the other one that we've missed is a percentage of invoice that we're supposed to be paid within 30 days. We've missed this one by inches. As you can see, the target is 100%. We're sitting at 99.6%. Only 3 invoices out of the 732 invoices were missed. And in the main is because of how our processes is structured that we've picked up now when we miss this target, that the invoices were moved from one area to the next, and there were delays between one area to the next. And we're engaging the relevant people who caused us to miss this target to take the necessary corrective measures. Next slide, please. On slide 17, Chair, I'll just focus on the red and leave the green ones. We've missed the target on the number of jobs created through our UIF funding and investment initiative. I think in the main, Chair, with this target is that with our investment portfolio, during the COVID period, we've spent more time withdrawing from the portfolio in order to meet the financial requirements for COVID tests. As we know, Chair, we've spent about 60 billion rands on COVID tests. And that's the money that we had to withdraw from different investment portfolios, which also then disabled these portfolios from creating jobs. And we're hoping as the economy stabilizes, we'll start to see an improvement in this target, Chair, in the coming year. Next slide. I think this one, Chair, is affected in the main by our COVID tests. Because in the COVID test space, Chair, the number of cases that came that needed investigations were many. And it therefore shifted the focus of our our fraud and risk team to focus on COVID tests, especially given the amount that is involved with COVID tests. So we shifted our focus on COVID tests and focus on investigating those cases to an extent that some of the people that we picked up were even arrested and even reported to the asset and forfeiture unit. We've brought in additional capacity in this space in a form of a service provider to help us to pick up speed on our investigations. We are also going to be setting up a separate team to focus on COVID tests, follow the money project, which will enable us to start picking up on this space, Chair. We can move to the next slide. On this one, Chair, if I can focus on the very top one, is a number of newly registered employers. This is a compliance drive, Chair, and members, as you can see, we've missed the target by 5,000. In the main, Chair, this is owing to the economic condition in the country, that there were fewer businesses that were formed, there were fewer companies that were pursuing to form business. Instead, more and more companies were shutting down. We are actually fortunate that we're able to secure 15,000 companies that were formed in this period. But I think, as I said earlier, as the economy stabilizes, we are trusting that we'll start to see more and more companies starting to register and more SMMEs being formed, and this target picking up. With the compliance certificate, Chair, here we missed the target due to the process being manual. One of the interventions that UIF is offering is the TES benefit, and the requirement for the TES benefit is for the company to be compliant, and the volumes in this space increased substantially or significantly, to an extent that we have even automated this process. And I believe in quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, because the process has been automated, we anticipate that the target will be met and we'll be sitting in a better position on this target. We can move to the next slide. Chair, I will skip on this slide, is all greens, and just maybe go to slide 21. Chair, I think in the main here, this is the TES space, as I was explaining now, that one of the key interventions during TES was the focus for UIF to help companies survive with a temporary employee relief scheme. And this is a process that runs through CCMA for us to fund these institutions to ensure that they survive the pandemic and that they continue to function. The demand was high in this space, and it affected the rest of the areas. With respect to the labor activation programs, these are programs that are driven by a physical presence. And most of our service providers did not quickly migrate to an electronic way of doing business. And hence some of the project paused during the impact of COVID. And we're anticipating that as the economy stabilizes, the labor activation program will start to pick up and will start to intervene in the economy, and we'll start to see more and more of our project picking up and an improvement in these targets. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to ask the CFO to walk us through quarter 1 financials. CFO, you can take over from here. Thank you. Unmute, CFO.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. I will then take you through our financial performance for the quarter. I think the main focus will be around the programs. We have program 1, which we normally call it, or it's classified as admin program. Then we also have program number 2. This program has to do with our core business, which is claims payment. Then we have program number 3. Program number 3, that's where we pay labor activation programs. If we can then go to the next slide. Okay, in terms of the admin expenditure side of it, is that 130% of the budget was spent. And within the budget itself, the program itself, we had areas where we had underspent, given that as the fund, we have implemented cost containment measures. And as well as in this area, you'll also note that that's where budget, rather traveling is also catered for. So due to COVID and the lockdown, we have not been traveling as much. So there is underspending in that regard. as well as issues around, catering. Less meetings were held, so there is underspending in that regard. So if we then move to the main one, the next slide. The slides then talks to our benefit payments. As you know, members, that we are currently paying for our normal benefits, as well as COVID TARS payments. And we call it WABU, that is workers that were affected by the unrest. In terms of the budget, 59% of the budget was spent and 41% was underspent. And the main reason for that, members, is that when we budget, we normally work with the actuaries who then look at the worst case scenario, and then we budget based on that. With COVID tests as well, we looked at potential cases that would receive, and then we budgeted on that as well, including the workers that were affected by unrest. But when we look at the reality currently, if I would then talk to the workers affected by the unrest as well, the money was set aside, but in terms of the spending, we have spent less on that, including the benefit payments as well. We have spent less on that as well. If we then move to the next slide. The next slide, members will then talk to the labor activation programs. As if you can also link to the performance that was reported earlier on by the Commissioner, where the performance there was not so good. That is also translated in terms of the budget. You'll also note that they've only spent 3% of their budget, and 97% of that has been underspent. This is due to the change in strategy. Previous years in this program, the focus was just on training. That strategy has since been changed, and the focus now is to support programs that would result in job creation. So that has resulted in the slow pace or slow movement in terms of signing off of those contracts. And what I can indicate to the members that Q2, when we come back to present Q2, you'll note that there is an improvement. However, very slow, but there is improvement. That is my report, Chair. Thank you very much.
DG, anything else? Or Commissioner, before we open for questions?
Chair, I'm comfortable. I will wait for questions, unless if the DG want to add something. Thanks, Chair.
No, thanks, Chair. I'm not going to add anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. There is the presentation from the UIF. I see two hands for now.
Chairperson.
Okay, the third one. All right. Okay, it's going to be, it's Honorable Kado, it's Honorable Bahrain, it's Honorable Mkondo, it's Honorable Zuma, and Honorable Volmanas, in that order. Thank you. Honorable Kado.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to spend a bit of time on these disciplinary matters at the UIF. And in particular, I wanted to know why it's taking so long to finalizing them. I mean, this relates, as we know, to the alleged acts of fraud and corruption. A year ago, we were told that charges had been brought against 7 officials following an investigation by the Special Investigating Unit. And those disciplinary hearings, I was told at the time by the Minister, were going to be conducted between the 19th and the 26th of February 2021. So it's almost exactly 1 year later, and we still don't know who all the officials are and what their designations are, what roles they perform at the UIF. We don't know the nature of the charges, and we don't know the outcome of the disciplinary hearings in each instance. So my question is this SIU investigation still ongoing? Does it have a deadline? If so, what is it? What was the outcome of that meeting that took place on the 3rd of December last year, which the minister informed me about by way of reply to a parliamentary question? We keep on being told that we can't get any concrete information on the charges and the findings lest they compromise ongoing investigations. But that excuse is wearing pretty thin now. It's over a year since those disciplinary hearings against 7 officials were held or meant to have been held. There needs to be an end date by which these matters will be finalized. Otherwise, this committee is simply being strung along. And what is that end date? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kado, Honorable Pakring.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for allowing me to ask. I appreciate it. Yeah, just to follow up on the 12 months waiting for outcome of disciplinary inquiries, in particular, the commissioner. We see that he also had 12 months worth of salary. I think 1 month was suspended and he didn't get salary for the 1 month, but we've spent 11 months. How much did we spend on the chairperson of these disciplinary inquiries? Was it done internally? What was the nature of the actual charges? I'd like to see the charge sheet. I think we're entitled to see it. And why wasn't any action taken for effectively a complete failure of the department in that we saw all this fraud across the board for almost 2 years within the department, and the commissioner takes no blame for that whatsoever. So I'd like to know that. Also, just in terms of the actual failure of the TERS debacle, we've seen complaints from all the trade union bodies, the employers, employees, almost across the board, and somehow no one wants to talk about that. It was a complete failure, and I suggest that we need a complete restructure of the UIF. Hopefully this will never happen again in terms of COVID-19, but we certainly saw a complete failure across the board. Also, during the TERS, people applied for TERS, and the minister said they didn't need to be, the employers didn't need to be compliant, but they must have a list of employers who weren't compliant, whose people did apply for TERS, and we should be picking up a lot of employers who were recalcitrant. There are employers out there who are fraudulent and had never registered their staff, but then we must be seeing them. And I want to know what the commissioner is going to do about pursuing those companies and making sure that they're compliant and making sure that there's back pay of all the monies that are owing. We certainly need that. And then finally, still at the UIF, you still can't phone anyone. You can't get hold of anyone. Everyone tells me that the phone lines are never answered. What's going on? Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Chair, sorry.
Was that one? Somebody said, Chair, sorry.
So that was me. I called you Commissioner and I meant to call you Chair, and I apologize for that.
Oh, sorry. Apology accepted. Honorable Mkondo.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, honorable members, the Minister, the DG, and all colleagues and guests. Chair, it will be very embarrassing for members of this committee to get this department to finish either SCOPA or the AG with the detailed report of these disciplinary processes that are taking place in the department. I feel that we really need to get this as members of this committee, because once other committees of Parliament and Chapter 9 institutions can get that there has been weaknesses, we will be embarrassed. But now we don't have full information as to exactly what is going on here. We need to be finished with this information so that we are able, as a committee, first of all, to get a sense of what is going on and to be able to intervene as expected. Chair, the performance of the Q1, in slide 6, the vacancy rate is indicated as to be green. I just want to check, Chair, that when UIF has 11 indicators out of 25 achieved, 44%, Chair, is a very low percent in terms of performance. But I'm checking as to when the vacancy rate has improved. Does that include a committee visited the UIF offices? We found that there was a high rate of a vacancy in the call center. And that is what is frustrating people out there, because in simple terms, it means they can't get hold of the UIF and their requests cannot be attended to as promptly as possible. And I want also to check, Chair, that is the UIF not taken as an essential service? Because now we'll be talking, we have been told that we'll be having COVID-19. No one knows until when. So is UIF not taken as an essential service? And we were once told that the department has spent a lot of money buying gadgets for officials to work at home. Was that not meant for better performance, Chair? Because we always receiving reports that entities and the department can't perform because of the COVID-19. But we were once told that there were millions were spent, the staff was given gadgets to go and work at home. So that is why it's very difficult for some of us to accept that this department and its entities cannot perform because of COVID-19. It looks like an excuse, Chair, and it really needs to be corrected. There are many cases, the TERS cases that were additional. Chair, it goes back to the essential service. How can this be improved? Because we still have a lot of employees that are complaining that their employers did not comply. And then when is this going to improve? And how is UIF intending to improve this situation? Thanks very much, Chair.
Before the next member, I would appreciate, Honorable Mkondo, if you can repeat the question on which was reflecting on SCOPA, if it's possible.
Thanks, Chair. It was a comment. I was saying it will be better. It will be better if, as a committee, we are finished with detailed reports of these disciplinary committee processes, because we don't want to be embarrassed because one day we'll see these things discussed by SCOPA and the Auditor General, and we don't have full information. It will be better that we are given full information as members of this committee, and we are able to intervene and be able to ask questions. Because if these things, they appear on SCOPA and we don't know, we don't have a detailed report, it becomes a problem, Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you, thank you. Honorable Zuma. Honorable Zuma.
Yes, Chairperson, thank you, Chairperson. Morning, Chair. Morning, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and the team. I just seek a clarity. What measures has the department and its entities put in place to closely monitor performance with the view of improving service delivery? Secondly, what plans do the department have to ensure invoices are paid on time within 30 days? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Zuma. Honorable Voldermas.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to the members who are on the platform. Also, good morning to staff from the department, including the Minister. I must also thank the Commissioner for the presentations that have come through. Chairperson, firstly, I welcome the presentation. It gives a lot of insight on where we are in the first quarter. By and large, the presentation, as already indicated, shows some improvement in the first quarter in comparison with the entire quarters that we had in the previous financial year, where it was on a downward spiral. So there seems to be an improvement, but it is not a satisfactory improvement in as far as the report itself is concerned. Throughout the presentation, you have your red colored blocks across the slides, and without sight of what is going to come forward in the second quarter, indeed we will be forgiven to start thinking of the red flags that a report of this nature shows. So it might be a good improvement from last year, but it might still follow the same pattern if not taken care of. Specifically, Chairperson, you have slides 6, 7, 8, 9, which Commissioner Marupeng said was a replica of one of the slides, 6 to be specific. So I'm concerned with the red flags that I'm seeing there. But there are reasons that are given there. Some are written satisfactory, meaning either the internal audit is satisfied with the documentation at hand that they have seen. But I don't know whether it is proper to be in the red and say you are satisfied with the documents. I think they should say something else, or combine what they are saying with the following slides, which says which are specific on what are they satisfied about in terms of the red. I also noticed that in some of the slides, Chair, maybe they would give an explanation that I think they are shortchanging themselves in one of the slides. I think it's on 18, where something that is planned for the second quarter is already reported on as not being having achieved. And I think they might be shortchanging themselves by saying they have not yet successfully executed an item which is still to come. I think they might relook into that. Maybe it might be amber or green. But I'm hopeful from what I pick up on the remedial action that is already in place that something might be happening in the second quarter. So apart from the DC detail that is taking some time from last year, by and large, it gives a person a background that says we are on the right track as compared to all the other quarters of the previous year. So if they can just highlight and explain the multitude of rates in terms of the slides, and also if I'm correct, are they sort of changing themselves? Perhaps it needs to change, and take it from there. I would appreciate such explanation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. I think that was the last hand. If there is a member who would like to speak, I can't see other hands. I'll then hand over to the commissioner and the DG to respond.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Maybe let me start because some of the questions raised.
Can you please unmute?
Chair, may I please interject whilst the commissioner is unmuting?
Yes, Honorable Vermanas.
No, Chair. There's a slide, and my apologies. There's a slide 9, which also gives the auditor's comments also as satisfactory, but there's also where they said there was no evidence to be validated under the indicator. It's on a number of them, and it's all red. I know that they said they had a problem with the labor activation program, but I did not get what this sentence would mean, where there's no evidence to be validated under the indicator. If they would explain that, if I missed it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, honorable member. Sorry for that, DG. You may.
Can you hear me, Chair? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, I was saying, let me start with the questions raised relating to disciplinary matters. Why it has taken a long time to finalize the disciplinary process. The committee will remember that when we first announced the suspensions, we indicated to the committee that the department will not do an internal process. We will get somebody from outside the department to look at these cases, and that's exactly what we did. And most of the time, the delays are as a result of the availability of the chairperson, firstly, because the chairperson is also responsible for other things where he's or where she's from. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, you remember that when this was done, it was at the height of of COVID-19, and again that impacted on the timelines, the availability of people to be able to attend, and some of the people even contracted COVID-19 themselves, and that made it very difficult for the process to be concluded. Secondly, for Commissioner Maruping, it has not taken 12 months for him to be under suspension. We took a decision that at some point that we will bring him back and he'll spend time in my office, do some work. And that's exactly what happened. So bringing him back today doesn't necessarily mean that he has not been in the department. He has not been working. He has been working whilst we're waiting for the outcome of the disciplinary process. And once that was concluded, we then sent him back to the UIF so that he can resume his duties. We came to the committee, I remember this, and we indicated the number of officials that were affected. And I do want to make this point that none of the officials were charged with fraud, because in what SIU picked up transgressions relating to supply chain processes. And all those officials were charged with those transgressions. So the fraud issues that Honorable Kado made reference to, I don't know those charges because not a single official has been charged with fraud. And the charges were formulated based on their SIU report. And I do remember that the department came to the committee and briefed the committee when some of the officials were brought back. I'll make an example of Ms. Judith Kumbi, who was the COO of the of UIF. We indicated that we brought her back. We indicated that when the investigation was concluded on matters affecting the CFO, we indicated that we brought the CFO back because the investigation was concluded. The only thing that was outstanding was the disciplinary process. We also indicated the outcome of the other officials who were involved, and we indicated that a number of them pleaded guilty, and they were then given a sanction. But there's a sense that the committee needs a report. We will provide that report to the committee on all these cases and how far the cases are. We did not spend a cent on the person who was chairing the disciplinary hearing, because it was somebody from government, and that's why we didn't spend a cent. In fact, it was somebody from the Public Service Commission. So we didn't pay. I think I responded on the issue of the 12 months. Honorable Bagram raised the issue of fraud that is rampant at the UIF, and nothing happened to the commissioner. In fact, the commissioner is not taking responsibility. And again, we have been very consistent in as far as the provision of information to the committee in these matters. You will again remember, Chairperson and the honorable members, that we came to the committee, we said at the very beginning of the process of COVID test benefit, we said we will have a process called follow the money, because we wanted to ascertain whether indeed the monies that were given to employers made their way into the pockets of the employees. And that's exactly what we've done. The reports on fraud were shared with the with SIU. They were shared with the Hawks. In fact, the UIF sits at the Fusion Center when all these cases that involve tests are discussed and steps are being taken. And you must have seen that or heard that there were arrests that were made involving the members of the public that were, that defrauded the unemployment insurance fund. So It is not correct, Chair, to say that on matters relating to fraud, there's nothing that has been done. We have not at this stage had a situation where employees of the Unemployment Insurance Fund have been implicated on this. We yet to get a report from the Hawks and the SIU that indicates that officials of the Unemployment Insurance Fund were involved in fraud. Once that report reaches my table, we're definitely going to act on it. The fact that the assertion that COVID-19 tests is a complete failure. Chair, I suppose this is an opinion of the honorable member, but we know the impact that COVID test benefit has had in the lives of those workers that receive the benefit, and we know the impact that this has had to the employers. That probably most of them would have closed shops as a result of the impact of COVID. So we think that this benefit did exactly what it was intended to do. We do accept the fact that there were failures on the part of UIF and also on the part of the employers, because we're sitting with cases now where the Unemployment Insurance Fund is unable to process a number of claims, not because they don't want to, because the applications are not competent. Firstly, I'll give an example. If you process the application and you go through all the other processes, and the only step that is left is verification of bank details, and you fail that step has absolutely nothing to do with the department. It's a matter between the bank and the individual claimant. And we've been trying to assist as a fund to make sure that these things are corrected, because the outstanding claims reflect negatively on our part, as if the UIF has not. And we've been working closely with the employers to resolve this. And a number of employers, in fact, have done something to resolve this matter. So from one side, even though there are failures, we cannot and we will not classify COVID tests as a complete failure. The employers not registered, again, we indicated that we'll appoint consultants to deal with the issue of following the money, and that's exactly what we've done. And the report has been submitted to the Unemployment Insurance Fund, and that report has been implemented. Those employers who are not willing to make sure that monies that they did not pass on to the employees are given to the employees, we are passing that list on to the SIU and to the Hawks. So there's a legal process that is underway to deal with those, and there are employers who are cooperating very, very well, who have paid, and the commissioner will share to you the amount of money that has been paid by the employers back. I think it amounts to just over 900 million, and those that have not paid. This exercise is not over. We're continuing to, because the first contract that we gave to the 7 service providers came to an end sometime last year, and the fund took over the functions. And you can see the commissioner will also give you details in terms of how the UIF officials have fared in terms of following the money. And I also know that there's a tender that they've adjudicated to, again, get other service providers to assist. And part of the response that we gave to AG is an indication of how long it will take for the UIF to reach all the employers that that receive the test benefit. The Commissioner will briefly share that information with you. So the commitment that the Minister made in terms of ensuring that those that are not registered are being pursued, indeed, that is happening. The issues relating to operational work of UIF and lines that are not being answered, I'll leave that to the Commissioner, but I know that we have a call center that is fully functional, and I'll leave that with the Commissioner. There's a point raised by Honorable Mkonto on the same matter of the details of the DC cases. We will provide those details, Chair. As I indicated, that we've been very consistent in sharing the information. On the question raised by Honorable Zuma on the measures put in place to monitor performance across the department and its entities, each entity has its process in place to monitor performance on a quarterly basis, and in the department we also have a rigorous process where we monitor performance on a quarterly basis, and we demand that in instances where there's not been any, or there are areas where performance has not been satisfactory, we demand that a process be put in place to make sure that that is corrected. If there's a need for a catch-up program, that is done, just to make sure that at the end of the financial year we meet the targets, but most importantly to make sure that we improve service to our people. The payment of invoices within 30 days. We also monitor this, we monitor it rigorously, Chair, because it's important that we pay service providers within 30 days. In fact, there's a report that we must submit to National Treasury on a monthly basis, indicating the number of service providers that we've paid and those that we have not paid, and the reasons for not paying them. So this is something that is also in the performance agreement of the Director General, and of course cascaded down to all the senior managers in the department to make sure that we've got our finger on the pulse of this, because it's very important for small businesses, especially, that we don't allow them to collapse because government or the department is not paying them timeously. I'll leave the rest, Chair, for the Commissioner and the UIF senior managers that are here to respond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, DG. I think DG has covered a number of issues, so I'm going to focus on the one that are speaking to operations. But I think, Chair, just maybe to add on the disciplinary processes, I can confirm, Chair, that two middle management members were disciplined and issued with warnings. And we also have two SMS members that were whose disciplinary process had been finalized and issued with final written warnings. And there's one SMS member whose disciplinary process has been finalized. We're just awaiting the presiding officer to conclude and submit the final report. But I think, as the DG said, with respect to the full disciplinary process, we are awaiting for the remaining of the presiding officer's report so that the next steps can be taken. I just want to move swiftly, Chair, to the question raised by Honorable Vormarans around slide 9 and slide 21, where it says, internal audit, there was no evidence to be validated. Chair, yes, I can confirm indeed there was no evidence that required to be validated, because in that target, there was no SMME that was supported. and hence there was nothing to confirm. So the information is correct, Chair. Thank you. And then I just want to lift on the service delivery issues. One of the things that we've done as a department is to decentralize all UI operations down to the provincial level, so that the provinces own the clients. So that if the portfolio committee is visiting the provinces, the client belongs to the province, and they can process all the claims at provincial level up to a labor center, owning the client and following the process to the T. And to this end, Chair, the Minister and the Director General had approved that in the provinces we introduce UIF directors, which will enable these individuals to focus solely on the UIF operations. I think maybe right now, Chair, I can say, Chair and members, it could be early days for us to start to enjoy the benefits of the decentralization and appointment of these directors. I think maybe in the next quarter or two, we'll start to pick up the benefits of this decentralization and also the appointment of the directors. The DG also mentioned that we've procured the services of a call center, where we have a fully functional call center that they run with our call center functionality. This enables us to focus on other areas in our space. But with this call center, it's fully capacitated, there's full functionality. I think what we are beginning to reap from the benefit of this call center is that the number of calls are dropping, but they're not dropping at the rate that we want. But it's because the call center is still growing into this new functionality that they're doing. But at least we know that the call center is there and is functioning. And over time, Chair, I think we'll start to see the benefit of this call center. The other thing, Chair, we are on the brink of concluding the appointment of a service provider that will help us to re-engineer the structures of both institutions, UIF and Compensation Fund, with the intention, Chair, to ensure that the two institutions are fit for purpose and they function as Schedule 3A. I think one of the things that oftentimes frustrate both the DG, the Deputy Minister, and the Minister is that as UIF, as Schedule 3A institutions, we are not able to procure our own ICT because we have to via through the SETA. And the DG has expressed his frustration with the SETA through to the Minister, who in turn, the Minister has already spoken to his counterparts to engage the SETAs. But the department is moving towards enabling UIF to function in the same fold as SARS, so that, as you would know, that SARS does not have the same ICT issues as UIF does, because SARS functions as a Schedule 3A institution, able to procure their own ICT infrastructure, put it in place, but we rely on going through SETA. And SETA has its own challenges, and those challenges affect the functionality of both UIF and Compensation Fund. And I think that's one area that we are working towards as the department, just to make sure that UIF and Compensation Fund are in that fold, and they can also be able to procure the necessary services, Chair. I think that DG touched on follow the money project, Chair. What I want to leave, just to confirm to the members, that with the project at high level, Chair, we follow the money that we had started. To date, over 2,000 companies has been followed and pursued, and we've confirmed where companies have paid money due to the employees. To date, Chair, we were able to recover 900 million from these companies, and we continue, Chairperson, to pursue these companies to make sure that money goes to the right people. And some of the cases, Chair, we have already reported them to both SIU and the Hawks, and they're being investigated. And because of the sensitivity, some of the details we cannot divulge because of the nature of the investigation. We are on the brink, Chair, of finalizing the appointment of 11 service providers that are going to help us pursue every single cent that we've dispatched to these companies so that they can pay the employees the money that was due to them. Chair, I just want to see, yes, I think there was a question raised around the vacancy rate, and Chair, and with respect to the call center, and I have just mentioned, Chair, that we have procured the services of the call center, and we believe that over time, will start to enjoy the benefits of the call center and see some of the call volumes and dropping. Chairperson, and a number of staff are working from home as we speak, but I think with the new directive that was issued, we're anticipating that staff members are going to start migrating back to the UIF, and also with the call center migrating now to a centralized departmental call center. We have additional capacity in the call center that we intend to start migrating to different functionalities to improve capacity, including improving capacity within the labor activation program. Chair, I think I have covered most of the questions, Chair. If I've missed any question, Chair, I apologize, but I think members can indicate the questions that I may have missed. Thanks, Chair.
I thank you very much, DG, and the commissioner. By the looks, I don't see any follow-up hands, and yeah, we will when we are wrapping up, I will come up on some of the issues. Can we then get the next presentation, Mr. Sakaza, which is Nedlac?
Nedlac, yes.
Share the screen. I am getting into trouble here. Why can't I get to
click on it and try to move it?
Just move it, yeah.
So
There we go, there we go.
Yeah.
Share screen. Chairperson, can you see my, sorry, I was struggling a bit.
Yes, we can see your face and your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to try to put it onto slideshow. I don't know why it's not going. Oh, it is on slideshow. Okay. Good morning, honorable chairperson and honorable members. The presentation that I'm going to do is focusing on the first quarter, and I'll look at our highlights and challenges, the performance against our KPIs, our financial report, and our risks. In the period in the first quarter, unfortunately and very sadly, we lost a staff member to COVID, Similikiwe Sikiwe, and we also lost one of the business constituency leaders who was very active in the UIF subcommittee from COVID. If I go then to the highlights, can I just check, Chairperson, if my screen is moving?
Yes, it is moving. You were on highlights.
Okay. Sorry. If you can recall, the first quarter was really from April to June, which was the time in which the vaccine rollout program was just starting, and the social partners were very active through the COVID Rapid Response Task Team to support the rollout of the vaccine program. And we also amended or made recommendations to amend the Health and Safety Direction under the OSHA Act to incorporate employer and employer obligations regarding vaccinations, which was signed by the Minister of Employment and Labour. In respect of the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Program, we worked hard on having a reporting portal so that the commitments that the social partners made could be monitored. This was also very important. I think the Portfolio Committee is very interested in the progress of Nedlac Fit for Purpose, and there was a research report that was concluded by Mr. and the ILO. We had a workshop, and we now have a clear way forward in this regard. And then internally, the EXCO had approved a revised organogram, and we were able to start the implementation. There were some challenges. As I've already mentioned, one of our staff members passed away, and it was also a difficult time with COVID, where, you know, the fact that there was a lot of people who were ill. We also had some problems in the chambers, particularly with the Audit task team, and I think You'll see now that it has been contested by OUTA, but even then we were struggling to get a consensus on this issue. And also with the Comprehensive Social Security and Retirement Reform Task Team, subsequently there is a report, but at that time we were also struggling to complete that. And again, you know, we always want to service our constituency that they engage appropriately, and we had quite a, but again, all that has subsequently been resolved. So in terms of the indicators, I think as the Minister said, in terms of our core work, we got 100%, but some of the other work we didn't do so well, which I'll explain on this slide. So we had introduced, I think I've presented to the Portfolio Committee, a new strategic plan, which included new indicators. And one of the new indicators was that 100% of IT complaints must be resolved within a set period of time, 24 hours. And I think we were overambitious about that because sometimes, you know, the staff member who had the complaint may not be available. Sometimes there's load shedding and so on. And we've subsequently changed the indicator so that if, you know, it can't be solved through things outside of our control, then we don't measure that time. Similarly, with staff training, we had hoped that we'd have a staff training plan in place, but it rested on performance agreements being signed, and we were also doing the restructuring process, as I explained, and that's why we couldn't meet this indicator. And then we introduced for the first time that organized business and labor and community needed to come with a plan about how they'd spend their funds. And I think that took quite a while for them to get used to this new requirement. Then just to go to the work of the chambers, it was quite a busy period. There was a finalization of a research report on sugar sweetened beverages levy. There was engagement about the National Financial Student Aid Fund. We started the process, which we're now completing, on inputting on the one-stop border policy. It hasn't really gone that far, an initiative, a task team around extending your coverage to atypical employees. We are revisiting that this year. The skills strategy, we're just finalizing now. And there was discussion on the finalization of a future of work report. In the areas of labor and development, as I said earlier on, we struggled to get consensus on the ARTA regulations. We did finalize subsequently the Central Application Services Bill, as well as the Official Identity Management Policy, land donations and beneficiary. And then I did talk earlier on about comprehensive social security, which we have subsequently finalized, and we did finalize the National Health Insurance Bill comments. In terms of Section 77 notices, we concluded one which was very long outstanding on crime in the Western Cape from COSATU, as well as one from SAFTU on the defense of workers' socioeconomic. In terms of COVID, there was work done, as I said earlier, on health and safety in the workplace, vaccination rollout, starting to discuss the issue of mandatory vaccination at that point in time. On the Liquor Social Compact, there was a lot of discussion. We haven't really progressed this, and it's really been in abeyance. I think the inability to get a lack of consensus between government and business. We have and continue to do work on communication and behavioral change, and then the COVID tours. In the period and subsequently also, there is a lot of engagement with NAT joints on information sharing, on gatherings, on communication, and so on. In terms of economic recovery, as the committee may know, there are 4 work streams on SMMEs, on public transport and freight, on localization and energy, and a lot of information exchange, particularly in the SME work stream. There was a lot of work on seeing how you can ease doing business for informal sector units, as well as finalizing at that point in time COVID-19 relief for small businesses in distress. On public transport and freight, I think it's more sharing of policy and inputs from government, like the public transport subsidy policy. On localization, this work has really been done by business, also together with Proudly South Africa and the DTIC. And on energy, there was work also done. We had one big meeting to report progress. And as I said earlier on, we launched an app and we do produce monthly reports on economic trends. In corporate services, I'm now moving away from programs. As I indicated earlier on, one staff member passed away, one resigned, one was dismissed. We didn't have any recruitment, so we do have a high vacancy rate. But as we had at that point in time, Nedlac approved a new organogram and a new wage curve for Nedlac, which we subsequently implemented. At a facility level, we are trying to improve our facilities with Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, and our elevator and air conditioning. In terms of the financial report, this is just the finances. I'll talk about it on this slide. You can see that our revenue is in order, but our expenditure was really below budget, a surplus of 5.9 million. And I think if you recall that period, we were not yet sure where we were on COVID. Would there be further waves? There were further waves. And so we continue. And I think the social partners now prefer to continue to work online, which means that we had a lot of savings on travel and accommodation, catering and refreshments. And we also had an underspend on consultancy fees. We've subsequently adjusted our budget to take into account the various factors of underspending. Then lastly, on the risks, I think if you listen to my presentation, I think I've referred to the risks, but generally in that period, we started to address the risks, and by now we really have identified the risks. And in fact, at the end of the year, we have done a new risk register where many of these risks are being closed and we are identifying new risks going forward. Chairperson, I think that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Executive Director. Members, there are questions. There's the presentation. Can I get? I don't see any hands. One hand for now. Honorable Kado, Honorable Baygram.
Yes, Chair.
Honorable Mkondo, Honorable Zuma, in that order. Honorable Kado.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask my customary question about the latest state of play on the governance task team that was looking into Nedlac statutes and protocols. I know I do ask this every time that you appear before us, but I would just like to get an update on exactly how the recommendations of that task team are being implemented or taking effect at Nedlac. And then secondly, I wanted to know whether the social partners had been engaging at Nedlac about the possible phasing in of a basic income grant, and whether you could provide more information as to where Nedlac as a whole stands on that issue. Thanks.
Honorable Baygram.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you, Honourable Chair. Yeah, I want to know if Nedlac has possibly tabled a relook at across the board our labour laws, because it looks like a lot of the workforce is going to be doing virtual work from now on. It seems that people are preferring it, and I hear that the Commissioner said that a lot of the social partners that she deals with would rather do it by Zoom or Microsoft instead of coming in. What we're finding at the workplace is that workers almost across the board are working from home. How do you implement the health and safety regulations, the productivity regulations, the regards to work time, time off, that sort of thing? And I think someone needs to have a look at some of our labour laws and see how we're going to handle this, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of confusion. So I just thought it might be useful to have a look at that. And then just as an aside, has Nedlac been approached by the ministry with regard to the quota that the minister is now boasting about for South African workers as opposed to foreign workers? So thank you.
I don't understand the boasting part. Honorable Mkonto. Honorable Mkonto.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, I did not note the slide, but first of all, let me welcome the presentation. On that slide, Chair, it is presented that the constituency capacity building plans at 0% because there is nothing that was submitted. I just want to check, Chair, if the relationship between Nedlac and those constituencies is like a doctor-patient relationship where only the patient has to go to the doctor, or according to the type of their relationship, they were also supposed to request those submissions from the constituencies. And if there is any agreement or whatever, at what frequency are those submissions expected between the two parties? Yeah, that is the question that I have, Chair. Thank you. Chair, I got it. I got it. On slide 10, Chair, there is this ERA app that was launched according to the presentation. Maybe it was explained, but I did not get it. In full, what does this ERA in full, what does it mean? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. Just one question from myself in appreciating the report. All members received, all of us received a correspondence from an organization called the Forgotten People of this country who are above 35 years in terms of employment. And in me reading that correspondence, I then circulated it, I forwarded it to Nedlac. And the reason that I forwarded it to Nedlac, to your office, it's because I think everybody, not only Parliament, but also stakeholders in Nedlac, to look into that and respond and well advise policymakers, lawmakers on how to move to approach the situation. I'm raising it because it's if it was then that it was sent to all members, it's not a secret anymore. It then means we have got a, should I say, a ticking time bomb or a sizable number of the citizenry that is concerned. And also as members of Parliament and as this committee in particular, we also ought to be concerned. That's why I circulated it. And I find it very alarming and strange that there is no member that has raised that issue right across all political divide in terms of members of this portfolio committee. That will be my question on that. What will be your view, and how then do you advise us to process that matter? Thank you. Over to you, Executive Director.
Thanks,
Chairperson.
Zuma, sorry, Honorable Zuma, sorry. A minute, sorry. This thing of not seeing your hand is a, okay.
Sorry, Chairperson, thank you. I just seek a clarity that how far is the recruitment process for the identified post for the one who passed away and the one who has been dismissed? Secondly, why is the Nedlac performance regressing compared to the quarterly performance report? Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Executive Director, over to you. Or DG, if you also want to start.
Chair, I think Ms. Seftel can start. I'll just add, Chair.
Okay, thanks, members for those questions. I'll just respond to them in order. Honourable Member Cardo, how far are we with the governance task team? So in the second quarter, the EXCO of Nedlac approved a number of key areas that needed to be reviewed, including the role of Nedlac, processes in Nedlac, representativity in Nedlac, the relationship between Nedlac and different parts of government and so on. And it was agreed that that we needed to revisit. The way to give effect to these changes was to revisit the Nedlac Act, the Nedlac Constitution, and the founding documents. And we are now in the process of finalizing a service provider who will work very closely with the governance task team in suggesting amendments, appropriate amendments to the documents that I've just mentioned. So I'm sure that we will even have started that process by the end of this quarter. And we envisage in the next financial year to systematically work through the different documents and make changes, which would then be presented to the EXCO for approval, and where it needs amendments, would need to come to Parliament and to the Minister as would be determined. Your second question related to what has been happening in Nedlac in relationship to the basic income grant. So I indicated earlier on that there has been this comprehensive social security and retirement reforms task team. One of the comprehensive social security reforms is that of the basic income grant. It was extensively deliberated upon in Nedlac. Research was also done for the social partners on the feasibility of it, and the report on that is presently or currently on our website. The social partners did indicate a preference for an instrument like the basic income grant in a Nedlac report on the green paper of comprehensive social security that was issued by the Department of Social Development. And that report is also on the Nedlac website. The department has subsequently withdrawn their green paper, but I'm sure the Nedlac social partners are ready to further engage if that comes back, as well as any other proposals on a basic income grant. In terms of Honourable Member Bagram's question, it is a very important and pertinent question. Maybe it is a question that Thembinkosi Mkhaliphi needs to address, because it is really government that has the responsibility to table labour law reforms. But it has been raised by, I think, most of the constituencies in Nedlac that any reform of labour laws does need to look at the implications of remote work, not only in respect to the Labour Relations Act and basic conditions, but even, and as you point out, definitely the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Compensation Act. What happens with compensation if I have an accident when I'm working in my home office? Then on the issue of quotas, so at the end of last year, the Minister of Employment and Labour, and I think together with the Department of Employment Services, came to Nedlac and presented their, what can I say, work in progress around the issue of employment policy and migration. And the Nedlac social partners did give their inputs. What I understand is the considerations of the minister will be further processed, and definitely, as I understand, any firm proposals approved by cabinet will be coming to Nedlac for deliberations. I think you may also be aware that Nedlac has just completed deliberations on the critical skills list from the Department of Home Affairs, and that report is also on our website and available. Then to go to Honorable Mkonto, yeah, you raise an important issue, definitely not doctor-patient relationship. We definitely not only requested it, these plans from the social partners, but we proposed a template, and subsequently we engaged with them a lot in a very interactive way. And we do now have plans from all of them. I think there's still room for improvement on the plans, but this is really about building a different kind of culture and a approach in Nedlac, and that does take some time and some process. And the on frequency of submissions, so we want a plan once a year, and then you know, they then, in terms of the plan, can request certain things like technical support or training and so on. On the ERA app, it sounds like the new ERA, but it stands for the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Application. And what it does, it monitors the commitments made by government, by business, by community and labor in the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan. Then, Chairperson, in terms of the forgotten people who are over 35, yes, we did receive it at Nedlac, and I did have a discussion with the Department of Employment and Labor, because I think any response needs to be joint in terms of that age cohort. I would say that, you know, in Nedlac, there's a number of task teams and places where the issue of employment is raised and social protection, and particularly the community constituency, but supported by others, is concerned about the grouping between over 35, and that's why there is a, you know, strong call for the extension of the social relief of distress grant, with the understanding that it's not only relief, but that amount of money enables unemployed people to look for work, as well as set up maybe small income generating activities in what is called like township economy or circular economies. You know, I have to say that also within Nedlac, there's a very strong, from the social partners, a strong concern that the ticking time bomb are the young people, but definitely, you know, I hope together with government and Department of Employment and Labor, as we discuss employment policy and labor law reforms, that forgotten cohort is also considered. In terms of Honourable Member Zama, so in terms of the recruitment process for the dismissed person, we did try and recruit some for that. It's a manager in economics, and unfortunately we didn't find a suitable candidate. We're going to restart the recruitment process this year. In terms of generally the recruitment process, we have employed an administrator in the new structure, and at the moment I am briefing a new senior manager for corporate services who has just started today. In terms of our performance regressing, in my mind, and I think in the mind of the Nedlac Executive Council and MANCO, this first quarter was an anomaly because we had shifted to new indicators, and you will see in the second and third quarter that our performance is improving. I think I did explain at the beginning of the presentation that there were a number of anomalies and technical glitches related to our new indicators, which led to our performance being poor. And I think, as the Minister said, where it matters in programs, our performance was at 100%. Honorable Chairperson, I hope I have answered the question satisfactorily. Thank you.
Yes, Executive Director, I think you have. I'm not quite sure. Are these hands legacy hands? Honorable Kado, Honorable Begram, Honorable Nkondo. So those are old hands. Okay.
Old hands, sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
Chair, sorry.
okay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Executive Director. Can we then get the last presentation, Productivity SA?
Chair, may I just, before Productivity SA,
Yes, Chair.
just on the National Labour Migration Policy, I just want to inform the committee that we have presented the policy at Cabinet, and we have been given a go-ahead to go to take the policy to Nedlac. So the consultation process is now going to start in earnest on the National Labour Migration Policy. I think there's also a question, in fact, it was a comment raised by Honorable Bakrim on the need for changes in the labor laws to take into account the fact that people now work from home, and it's a very important question or comment, because on issues of occupational health and safety and compensation, you'll know that, for instance, for occupational health and safety, a house has always been a no-go area. And I think with the Honorable Bakrim will know this, with the operation of the law, we have automatically changed the house into a workplace. Now that the domestic workers, are included in the Compensation Act. Again, the honorable members will remember the Constitutional Court judgment on that, which we did not oppose, because it was something that we're already working on. So if you're injured at home, it will be now a compensable incident. However, employers have to develop what we call working from home policy that really guides what will be happening, the hours of work, and how performance will be managed, and what instruments they will use to manage performance. So that's what employers need to put. They need to put in place. In the next 6 months to a year, it's going to be quite interesting, because we will be taking to Nedlac a whole host of amendments that will be requiring, especially to deal with issues of small business and others. But when that time is right, we will again come to the committee to share that information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, DG. Productivity SA, Mr. Sakaza.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to honorable members and the leadership of the department. Since this is the first presentation in terms of the 2021-22 financial year, Chairperson, we felt that it is important that we first share with the committee the scope and operating environment of Productivity SA, and we have tried to cover that in slides number 3 up to 7. But for purposes of today, in terms of this, I will focus on this slide 5, just to indicate to the committee that as we pursue our mandate of improving productivity as well as employment growth, we are forced to work with economic cluster departments. In the department, we fall within the scope of the Public Employment Services Program. But then if you look at the slide, we have pulled out key issues that we have to be focusing on in line with the mandate as it relates to other policy mandates as well as government programs. And we have shared with the committee the issues that are specific to the National Development Plan, the issues that are specific to the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, the issues that are specific to reimagining the industrial strategy and district development model, as well as the international instruments that talks to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Africa Agenda 2063, as well as the ILO Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work. And to emphasize that as we do work, we also play a critical role in the African continent. That is why we're talking about the Africa Agenda 2063, particularly on the issues around productivity and the quality in the continent. We're working with the ILO as well as JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, to ensure that the capacity that South Africa, in particular Productivity SA, has accumulated over a period of time is being shared with other productivity centers in the continent. And in terms of slide number 7, we're just giving a picture of how then we are addressing productivity and competitiveness holistically, because originally in the past years, our focus was more on the improving productivity and competitiveness in the workplace. We have now migrated and grown to a point where we're looking at productivity holistically in terms of productivity and competitiveness holistically, whereby we look at it at enterprise level, look at it at sector level, as well as at a macro level. And that is why the work that we do, you'd always find that the work that the DTIC is doing in terms of the sector master plans, we are directly involved in terms of those sectors, particularly the productive sectors, or one would talk about the manufacturing sectors. Furthermore, if you look at slide number 8, I just want to highlight something relating to the last bullet point there in terms of the macro environment, that we are sitting with overall productivity growth that is low. And we measure this annually. By October each year, we produce a productivity report. The last report was produced last October, and next time when we come to the committee to talk to the third quarter report, we'll give you the outcome of that. But for now, as we focus on Q1 of 2021-22, just to indicate that in 2019, we have seen a decline in productivity. Again, in terms of slide number 9, one other issue that we are vested with is the issue of competitiveness landscape. Each quarter, I mean, in Q4 of each year, we collect information which we submit to the Institute of Management Development for purposes of measuring our competitiveness as an economy. And as I indicate, when we come to report to the committee in terms of Q2, we'll be giving you an indication of the performance of our economy as it relates to competitiveness, But then we would like to give you the information as it stands here, that as of 2021, we saw a regression in our competitiveness ranking from 59 to 62 out of 64 countries. And we have shared with the committee the areas of concern. If you look at economic performance, government efficiency, business efficiency, and infrastructure, you can see that we're doing badly in almost all the areas. And some of these areas, if you look at economic efficiency, government efficiency, and infrastructure, they are not directly under the purview of productivity SA, and that is why we're saying we're compelled to work with others so that we continuously remind the country that these are the areas where you have to improve. Our focus area is around business efficiency in terms of productivity and efficiency, and the department looks at the labor market efficiency. And then also we are involved in terms of management practices, as well as attitudes and values, in particular at enterprise level, as well as at sector level. So we felt it's important that we share this with yourselves so that whenever we make a presentation before you, you link the work that you do with these areas that I have indicated. Chair, if we go to slide 10, we are actually highlighting the fact that South Africa has a challenge in terms of informality. If you look at the over 2.5 million small enterprises in the country, over 1.5 million thereof are operating in the informal economy. And that is why our energy is focused on the small enterprises, in particular, also looking at how can we transition those in the informal economy, particularly those in the productive sector, so that we begin to look at this issue of if these enterprises are productive, the potential is we will have long-term competitiveness of our economy, as well as sustained inclusive growth. So this is the space in which we're operating. And when you then look at the slide 12, Chair, we're just sharing with the committee the risks that are prevalent in our environment, and we consistently ensure that we look at this risk and ensure that we mitigate them, particularly those that are within our space, so that we don't find that the entity suffers any hiccups as it relates to these issues. Chair, with regard to performance in Q1, I would like to focus mainly on slide 13, just to give an indication that we had 5 strategic objectives, and those were translated into 8 performance indicators in Q1, and that we have achieved in terms of all the strategic objectives at 100%, which translates into every program that had to do work in Q1 was able to achieve what we set ourselves to do. You can see we're showing this in terms of slide 14 per program. Corporate Services is looking at program 1, and I think it's important at this point to indicate that one of the key indicators in terms of program 1, it's a settlement of invoice for service providers within 30 days of receipt of invoice. We consistently measure that, and I can confirm to the committee that we have achieved that.
In terms of administration, the focus is, I'm sorry, program 1, HRM, the focus is on training of staff. We will be reporting that to the committee in Q4. The same with corporate relations. We didn't have an indicator in that space. Program 2, which is competitiveness improvement services, we had 3 indicators and we achieved all of them. In terms of program 3, business turnaround and recovery program, we set ourselves at 3 indicators and all were achieved. And the committee would recall when we table the annual report for the 2020-21 financial year, you gave us an instruction that we should always supply you with information about how we are progressing in terms of this area of work, whereby we're supporting enterprises that are going through distress. We have submitted that report, and I would imagine that the committee members will be able to go through the report, and when there are issues, they can always be raised with us. We are raising this, Chair, because with the COVID-19 and subsequent restrictions, a number of enterprises were affected and they have been referred to us for intervention, and we can confirm that we have been very successful in terms of our responses. And then in terms of research, program 4, research, innovation and statistics, we have during this period tabled 1 report that has to do with the competitiveness improvement, and hence we're saying achievement was at 100%. In this slide, Chair, we're just giving you a picture of where we were in Q1 of 2020-2021 financial year and how we have progressed in terms of the financial year 2021-2022. And I think without preempting the questions, one member, honorable member, asked, what are the things that you have put in place to ensure that you monitor and evaluate performance on a continuous basis? I can confirm to the committee that we have an internal audit which is looking at our performance, but over and above that, we monitor, ensure that if we said we failed to achieve this, we put in place the remedial action, as well as when is that remedial action to be completed, so that we see some level of improvement. And we have seen that this is working, particularly if you look at where we were in 2020-21 at 40% in Q1, and in Q1 of 2021-22, we got to what we are used to being as a productivity center of achieving 100%. This slide gives you just the impact in terms of the work that we do around the business turnaround and recovery program, as well as the competitiveness improvement services for that particular quarter. If you look at the business turnaround and recovery, we had 3 output indicators. The first one talking to the number of jobs saved. And you can see that our target was over 1,000. We achieved over 4,000 in terms of the number of jobs that we saved. And the second indicator there is companies facing economic distress that are supported through the turnaround strategies. For Q1, we targeted 21, and the actual was 35. And I must indicate the benefit here flows from the strategic partnerships that we have established, including the clothing and textile bargaining council, whereby they refer companies that has a potential to retrench workers to us for purposes of assisting them. This is paying dividend because we don't have to be running around looking for companies. We have some sort of a source from where we get the companies to support. And one other key thing that we always do in that space is the workplace or future forums. These are the workplace collaboration teams to ensure that once we have intervened, put strategies for turnaround and implemented those, the future forum members will remain in the company, ensuring that these are implemented and that the company is sustainable. In this instance, we targeted 63 for future forum members to be trained and capacitated, and our actual performance was 110. In terms of the competitiveness improvement services program, this is the focus in terms of small enterprises that we are supporting in order to improve their competitiveness and sustainability. You will realize that for Q1, our target was 250, and the actual performance was 328. And then in terms of the entrepreneurs, workers, and managers capacitated to promote a culture of productivity, we targeted 400, and the actual performance was 816. And then in terms of the productivity champions, now I want to make a distinction here. If you look at the business turnaround and recovery, we are talking about future forums. These are workplace forums that are sustaining our interventions in those companies where we intervene. But when you talk about the productivity champions, the target here is we are wanting to capacitate, particularly, as I said, we're looking at the 44 districts and the 8 metros. We would want to have at least a productivity champion in a district as well as in a metro, so that we gradually capacitate the country holistically to be a productive nation. So in Q1, we targeted 65, and then our actual performance was 135. So that chairperson is in respect of our performance. And at this time, with your permission, I would request Mr. Mtolisi Dludla, who is our acting Chief Financial Officer, to take the committee through the financial report as well as the audit outcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Dludla.
Thank you, CEO. Morning, Chairperson and honored members. If you can move to the next slide on the financial performance. Yeah, the first quarter, as you are aware, we received funding from 3 departments. We received the main funding from DEL, Employment and Labor. We received funding from the UIF for the PTNR program, as well as from the Department of Trade Industry for our WPC program. If you look at both the Department of Employment and Labor and the DTIC, for the first quarter, we were on target in terms of the funding. It was received on time. However, we were behind on the PTNR. And the reason being, the funding was received around June 2021. However, given that the program had been suspended for some time, we had to then start capacitating the program, and it took us some time until, early in the year. However, to date, if you see the Q2 and Q3 later, you'll see that the traction has actually come about. And in fact, we have actually finally utilized all the funding for the UIF. So, and in terms of the expenditure, we are okay. For the Q1, we're still behind, a target, but I think we're tracking okay. So for Q1, we ended the quarter in a surplus, about 511,000, performance. And when you look at it, in terms of the programs on the next slide, you will see the allocation between the 4 programs that the CEO spoke about: program 1, 2, 3, and 4. Program 1 being the administration, program 2 being the CIS, 3 and 4. In terms of the actual expenditure, we're okay. On the CIS, it was just a timing issue. However, the correction, took place, during the year where both actual and the budget, tracked each other correctly. And when we looked at our performance for 2021 financial year on the next slide, this just gives you a snapshot of how, we've performed, for the year, we received an unqualified audit report, which was unchanged from the previous financial year. Our revenue increased slightly, by 3.7, which was good. Both irregular and fruitless expenditure were still at 0. So we still managed to control those. Our going status is still, unchanged. So we're still in a going concern. And, we actually improved from a deficit position to a surplus position for the first time in so many years. That's just a slide, presentation on the financial performance. Thanks, CEO, and thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Honorable Bigram, Honorable Mkondo. In that order.
May I go ahead, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. As the Minister said when we opened up this meeting, we are pretty low with regard to productivity in South Africa. In fact, so low, I think we're in the bottom 2 of the world where it's been done. So there's clearly a problem. I'm not sure how every other country seems to get it right and we just don't. And maybe if I could be so bold as to venture a suggestion in that Productivity SA starts working more closely with the Department of Basic Education and Higher Education, because it's obviously the educational institutions that are the start of this. Clearly, we're going to need people who can face different types of jobs and people who are more educated in maths and science. In fact, I've just read a report now from the World's Economic, or I can't remember what it was, but they said that about 60% of the jobs that we know today in 20 years' time won't exist. So we are destined to be a lot worse. I don't know how you can get much worse than being at the bottom of the pile, but we are destined to be worse when maths and science is so bad in this country in the first place. And I'm not blaming the Commissioner at all or his staff. I think he's being fed with a rather raw egg to work with, and it's very difficult for him. And I'm just suggesting getting together. I've just read a wonderful book, and maybe the Commissioner can have a look at it. It's called Entrepreneurship by senior lecturer Steve Reed. He works at a college in Cape Town, or he lectures at a college in Cape Town, where he teaches future graduates in becoming electricians and plumbers, etc., bricklayers. He teaches them about entrepreneurial work and how to become entrepreneurs coupled with their profession. And it might be something that possibly the Commissioner could look at to contact someone like that at the Cape College or any other college and see if they can start working together, because it clearly can't be business as usual. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Honorable Bigram, Honorable Nontsele.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, honorable members. Chair, my point is basically on the...
Sorry, before that, I don't know whether Honorable Mkondo's hand was not up. Ne? I hope I'm not...
Yeah, I thought you were missed. Yeah, I thought you were making a mistake.
You noted me, Chair, then I lowered my hand because I always forget after you immediately noted me, I then lowered my hand.
You
But
may
it's
continue.
okay. No, Chair, you can give me another chance, no problem.
Okay. Honorable Nonchel.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on the points that have been raised by the PSA, the Productivity South Africa. Firstly, let me appreciate the report, and secondly, congratulate the improvement that has been made, particularly with regard to the performance that moved from low for the same quarter previously. It moved from 40% to 100% now. So meaning that the entity is in fact demonstrating quite capacity and capabilities to in fact to perform much more better. But going to the issues at hand, that is the issue of the mandate and the ability to help the country or our competitiveness improve. The question therefore would be, to what extent is the entity going to be able to overcome the limitations or the conditions that have changed drastically in the work environment, taking into account the conditions imposed by COVID-19 and the growing situation where people choose to work from home. How therefore the PSA would in fact venture into the market and be able to realize the improvements that the market is supposed to be embracing between now going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nonchel. Honorable Mkondo.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the presentation. Chair, my first question will be on the fact that we are now at the 62nd position out of 64 countries. The COVID-19 pandemic, Chair, it's a global pandemic, meaning that even the countries that are performing better than us, they've been affected by COVID-19. So my question would be, is it possible that as Productivity SA, we are able to get as to exactly what is it that the other countries are doing better than we do, for the sake of improving our own situation? Number two, Chair, my question will be on the productivity and competitiveness, together with the tender system that we are having in our country. How does that affect our productivity and competitiveness? And what are the points that can be given to us, advices that can be given to this country in as far as that is concerned? The unemployment, poverty, and inequality, the triple challenges. The inequality in particular, does the tender system contribute to that, and what can be done? What advice can Productivity SA give to this country for us to be able to improve? And then when it comes to the slide 13 that talked about the sustainable employment, can this program of community development workers and the EPWPs be regarded as sustainable employment? And if not, what is it that can be done to improve, to make those type of work to be sustainable? And to also check when it comes to the sustainable jobs, Chair, the issue of, I'll go back to the tender system and talk about the subcontractors and the workers that are being hired by the tenderpreneurs, as to the type of work given to such people can be referred to as sustainable. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. You may respond, Mr. Mutumi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think the issue raised by Honorable Member Bahrain is appreciated, because for all intents and purposes, it is important that when you look at productivity and competitiveness issues, you always look at the labor market in terms of demand for labor, as well as the supply of labor. So from a perspective of the supply side, indeed, it is important that we work with institutions, both the Department of Basic Education as well as higher education, science and technology. But then in that space, we also include the universities and technicons. We have gone as far as signing memoranda of agreement with 3 institutions of higher learning, Tshwane University of Technology, the University of Johannesburg, as well as University of Pretoria. And we are wanting to expand this so that we have at least 2 universities or technical higher education and training institutions per region, because we're organized into 3 regions. But at the center of our agreement with the universities in particular is curricular development, so that, as you rightfully say, we begin to create a cadre of qualified people, be it in industrial engineering and other fields, who would walk into the labor market, understand clearly what are the issues around productivity and competitiveness, and begin to pull this economy from the bottom end. And you're so right. It's important that as we do these things, particularly as we look at slide number 9, you can see that that infrastructure, a lever of competitiveness, it's actually talking to those issues that you have referred to: education, health and environment, scientific infrastructure, and then technology infrastructure. And in those spaces is also issues around innovation. So we're taking this matter very seriously as we do the work that we do. And I think your issue link up to, in particular, the slide number 5 that we shared with the committee. As I said, look at the slide so that when we talk about the work that we do, you always gain an understanding of what are the key areas that we are targeting as we do this work. The issues raised by Honorable Nontsele, we appreciate your comment on the movement in terms of performance from 44 to 100%. There's a lot of work that we still have to do in this space, because the key thing that we're really wanting to do is to begin to show impact of our interventions. And that went into when we are crafting performance, key performance indicators. We're now shifting strategically from indicators that has to do with activity, but then to focus on the outcomes. What difference are we making in terms of the enterprises that we have intervened in, but also that those enterprises, when they employ or when they create employment, it is actually decent employment, so that also they are able to improve the well-being of workers. And then the issue you raised also, it's about how to mitigate the limitations, including in relation to the changing nature of work. One of the experiences that we picked up in 2020, just when the pandemic hit our shores, was that a number of companies had to scale down operations. And then others just unfortunately shut down. And when you look at the CEDA report for that period, it gives a picture of the number of small enterprises, in particular, those in the informal economy, that just could not sustain the pressure in terms of what was coming our way. But then also for us as an entity, because the work that we do, we actually have to go to the shop floor to engage both management as well as workers on productivity and competitiveness issues. We were seriously impacted in that space. And that is why during 2021, you would see our performance at 44%. But then two things had to happen. One was to look at those enterprises where that can operate remotely. So we built a capability within Productivity SA for us to be able to also work remotely, but be able to reach the companies as and when they need our services. One thing that happened was, because we were working remotely, we had to reduce the brick and mortar in terms of the spaces that we occupy, in terms of our leases and so on. We're able to save close to 50% on our lease costs. And that money was then deployed to ensure that our productivity practitioners have the tools of trade, including their being mobile. So we invested in technology to ensure that we can be able to provide the same type of support to enterprises, but online. And people would ask, but what about entrepreneurs in the rural areas as well as in the townships? Our argument has always been, every entrepreneur has got a cell phone. With a cell phone, there is so much that can be done in terms of a training program. So we sort of moved into that space to begin to ensure that we offer our services online, and then also ensuring that those enterprises that can also be able to connect, and in their connecting, then we can be able to interact with them. So the issue, and you will notice, again, in terms of slide number 9, we are giving you a picture of our understanding of the work that is happening in the ILO space as it relates to the future of work. And I must indicate we're working very closely with the ILO to capacitate us as well as the enterprises that we support. In partnership with the ILO, we are also implementing a program called SCORE that is targeted at the small enterprises. Our focus was in terms of this program on the clothing sector because it was mostly affected. Honorable Mkonto raised fundamental questions. I may not directly respond to others, but I will give an indication of our view as a productivity center. The fact that we moved from 59 to 62 out of 64 countries is definitely a worrying factor for us. And again, if you look at the areas of concern, you raised the question, can we pick up lessons from elsewhere? The answer is yes, because all that you do, the work that we do, it's about measuring and evaluating productivity and competitiveness holistically. So the first thing that we did, we approached the Director General to say, DG, we've got instruments that measure and evaluate productivity and competitiveness. And those are in line with one, the Institute of Management Development, as well as the World Economic Forum. So they give us a lot of data that has to do with the competitiveness of nations, but they also give you indicators of what are those nations like your Singapore, why are they in the first top 10? You also find the Nordic countries, they are in the top 10. What is it that you can learn out of them? So we always pull out those things. When we table, Honorable Mkonto and members, when we table the competitiveness report for 2022, we will show you the areas where we have improved as a country, the areas where we have regressed as a country, but would also show you what the top 10 countries are doing and what are the lessons that we can pick from those. You can see in this slide, just there at the bottom, we're showing you the challenges that have been picked up in that report. These are the things that we should focus on, and everybody else elsewhere, it's focusing on those, ensure that they are competitive. The second issue that you raise is the issue relating to the impact of the tender system. For all intents and purposes, one would not talk about the impact thereof because we have not really analyzed that. But the issue becomes, if a company has been given a tender by government and that company's productivity and competitiveness has to improve, that's the space in which we would come in to say, in terms of quality, these are the issues that you have to do. In terms of speed, these are the things that you have to do. In terms of employee morale, these are the things that you have to do. So if there are entrepreneurs who have been given any tender and they want to improve their efficacy, where we are to go to enterprise. I must indicate that in discussions with the Small Enterprise Funding Agency, as well as Industrial Development Corporation and the National Empowerment Fund, because we always argue that government is the funder of first resort. But then our argument is the funding should be linked to productivity outcomes. We believe that if as a country we adopt that approach, that when government fund these small enterprises, as it is the strategic objective of government, the funding should be linked to productivity outcomes. And linking those actually talks to these 4 issues that we're talking about: their performance economically, their performance in terms of governance, their performance in terms of business efficiency, as well as the performance in terms of infrastructure. So we believe that if we just look at this slide, we would be in a position to get to a point where we say, if we want our enterprises to be competitive and sustainable, which is in a way leading to sustained and inclusive growth. If we can manage this slide as a country, I can assure you we will be a winning nation. When it gets to issues around EPWP programs, whether they are sustainable or not, my argument is, if we build into those programs productivity and competitiveness measures, so that when those workers emerge out of those programs, they do have portable skills, which skills could then be transferred to other sectors. And that is why in our engagements with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, as well as the CCMA, when it comes to the TARES program, we always talk to the issue of transitioning as well. How do you transition those workers out of the EPWP program into the formal economy? So there's a lot of work that can be done in that space, particularly as we talk about the transitioning of both workers, as well as transitioning of small enterprises that are operating in the informal economy. So, Chair, in a nutshell, if you want a competitive and sustainable enterprises, productivity interventions are the solution, are part of the solution. And then, but however, it is important that we also look at other instruments in terms of economic performance, government efficiency, as well as infrastructure. I hope I've been able to summarize the first check. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mutumi. DG, is there anything that you would like to add? DG?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, no, I don't have any issue that I need to add, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands. Is DM still around?
I'm
DM?
here. I'm still here.
Okay.
The person, I'm still here. I don't see myself when the presentation is still on here. So I hope honorable members are able to see me.
Zolani, can this presentation be taken off the screen, please? Zolani?
Yes, Chair. Mr. Mutunya must, take it off. It's taken off. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mutumi, please. You may continue, TM. Mr. Mutumi.
Thank you so much. No, thank you. I also can't see myself, but it's fine. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you, members of the Portfolio Committee, for the opportunity. I'm not going to be detailed because the Minister has already opened But I want to thank you, Chair, for this opportunity and thank all the presentations already made by our presenters from the commissioners, the CEO, and the executive director from the Nedlac. Safe to say, Honorable Chairperson, I think we need to commit as the department that in terms of the UIF, we are happy of the continued improvement, but we want to also assure that the committee that we are going to continue monitoring the situation and make sure that we report to the committee frequently on matters that relates to the improvement in the UIF itself. But also in terms of the UIF itself, we are going to make sure that we continue to recover the outstanding monies in terms of that activity of following the money. We are going to continue to recover the money that is outstanding, especially with those employers who receive the monies and never dispersed the monies to the employees. And I think we will have to also take steps, legal steps against those employers who never disperse the monies, and that is also something that we need to be a standing agenda item where we give feedback to the portfolio committee about such companies. And I think it is now time for us to name and shame those that, despite the fact that we have made such a call, but those companies continue not to disperse the money and not even returning the money back to us, and therefore we need to name and shame them. So we will make sure also that we will keep the portfolio committee abreast of developments in terms of other outstanding DC processes that are still outstanding, that are continuing. We'll make sure that we report back to I'm sure we might have not mentioned the fact that we want to continue to repurpose lab programs with specific focus on component of enterprise development, similar to one of the lab projects we have launched in the Eastern Cape. And I'm sure at some point, honorable members will want to, when they are in the Eastern Cape, visit such a project that we have launched in the Eastern Cape, which is a lab project. In terms of the program of the portfolio committee, it will be very interesting for the committee to visit such projects, just to go and see the work that we are doing in terms of lab projects. But with the issue of the Nedlac, honorable members, I think we also committed to reviewing the Nedlac protocols and to position Nedlac to be an institution which will impact positively to issues relating to the economy. I will not dwell much on congratulating them on their improvements because the minister has done so, honorable chairperson. And I think there is also an improvement that we see in terms of productivity SA. So, and as they have reported to issues that of their challenges in terms of the quota, I take it that committee members has engaged on the issues, but as we look forward, as always, honorable members, honorable chairperson, to your guidance as a committee and more meaningful contributions. And I take it that I've come to the end of my closing remarks, and we thank you once more, and we take your inputs. We don't take them personal, we take them as helping us to reshape and build where necessary in terms of the criticism that we get that is progressive and productive. And I think we will improve on the issues where there is a shortfall in terms of information, and make sure that in the next reports we give better inputs and better reporting. Thank you so much, honorable chairperson and honorable members, for your audience. Thank you.
Thank you, TM. I do think, and thank you for DG and your team for the presentation, and also thank members for their responses, for their questions, and subsequently responses from the entities and the department. And I want to make this humble appeal to us as members, which I think the DG has responded to that. And I want to make this, should I say, intervention or directive, which will be an unfair directive. It is true, honorable members, that we are always kept abreast, informed by the department on issues that are sensitive, in particular around UIF. UIF and Compensation Fund has been one of the entities that during the hard lockdown, we have been calling them month in, month out. I don't think, honorable members, it is really fair that we come across and ask questions as if we are not briefed on some of these issues. And an issue that I want to uplift is that the issue of suspensions at the UIF. And therefore, DG, DM and DG, please, can you please have a spreadsheet just to remind us of these matters that have been asked. SIU was here. I don't think the department, and I don't want to sound as if I'm defending the department, I don't think the department has got two protocols, has got that responsibility to rush whoever is presiding over a ADC in whatever area. And my understanding that is something that we are to know as activists and as public representatives. And therefore, I want to say that there's nothing wrong in asking a question, but there's everything challenging in asking a question as if a matter has never been reported to us. Secondly, I'm humbly again requesting to members, if there is a labor center that is not functioning and doing its work, and entities in that labor center are not doing, and communities, citizenry, workers are frustrated, name that area. If it is Gqeberha, name it. If it is George in the Western Cape, it must be said, a labor center in this, we must not say, we must not comment and respond and ask questions as if all labor centers in this country are not functional. It will be unfair to public servants. It will really be unfair to staff employed by the Department of Employment and Labor, so that we know who are not pulling up their socks in those departments, in those areas. Let me give an example. I was called by a worker that was extremely frustrated. And he said, I'm staying in Stataram. I'm from a King Williamstown office, and I'm told there that the systems are down. And I said, fine, but how am I to know if systems are down? And that young man was so frustrated and said, what type of a chairperson are you that you don't know when systems are down you are a chairperson? I said, but I can't know all of them. And the list that I did at the time I called the provincial head of the Eastern Cape and gave her the particulars of this young man. And that was resolved. And the client came back to me and apologized for being emotional. And I was told why he was emotional, because he was justified for being emotional. Please, honorable members, for us to be able, for us in us conducting our oversight and wanting the department to account, let us be specific. I am humbly requesting. I know we want this department to do the work, and we want them to do the work as quickly as yesterday, but let us really be specific. In our next report of the quarter that we'll be receiving, we will then have to do that. Having said that, I think we have got a responsibility. What Nedlac has reflected, and what Honorable Bagram has reflected, which is very, very much important for the country and for us to look into this, that now that people that are working at home, what then happens to our labor laws? But I want I know that the community, the country is listening. To those that are listening, I don't think that then means that we will then, there are laws that will then have to be what? To be changed, or to be, I'm just looking a better word, because we can't allow that system, that situation to happen. But it necessitates us to really look into how best then do we ensure, now that people are working at home. The last thing, back to UIF, I agree with you, DM. As much as we want to know corrupt members of staff of UIF, which is correct, communities, which is correct, we must also know, we must be told of the private sector companies that have defrauded UIF. That we are to know. The country, as much as the country is to know the staff and the communities, it must also know both public and private, the departments, those people that are working in the departments that have defrauded. I'm raising this with pain, and I hope members will understand, because we are faced with these responsibilities. We are faced with these challenges. We have been given an added mandate, which on the 23rd of March, we are to receive that. But in us, ourselves also, in us conducting our oversight, which is in Parliament, committees of the National Assembly are under scrutiny by the entire country through what transpired outside Zondo Commission, because we are asked a question: where were we? How are we ensuring that these issues are laid bare for the country to know, but not only for the country, but for the betterment of government that is providing services to our citizenry. And thank you very much. We will then we are having our next meeting next week, and I hope GM and DG, you are prepared for the 23rd of March, because 23rd of March is going to come, and we are really going to dedicate our time on that matter. Having said that, thank you very much. Our meeting is stand agenda until we meet next week. And Mr. Begram, I hope you are one of those that are going to attend SONA physically. I still want my chocolates. Good afternoon. You may go, you may have your lunch, honorable members. Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Bye-bye, Mama. Bye-bye, everybody. Colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Chair.
Bye.